combined.
Well, what would ours cost to get out of the ground? Since in a warm climate with lots of infrastructure, it costs $60 to $70 a barrel. What would it take where there's no infrastructure and where the costs are 2, 3, 4 times higher?
Well, it's going to be very competitive because what we have that they don't have is under the ACES tax structure, you have a
that's not
exploration
production.
credit.
ACE has nothing to do with production. Our production is declining. Our production is declining. Our production is declining. So what is finding the oil? We know it's there already. Heck, we know it's up in the Chukchi. We know it's in Anwar.
We pick up significant amount of the development costs. In fact,
not development costs of the exploration costs.
No, we pick up development costs. In fact, I've run analysis on when Jim Alva came to Alaska and said, hey, if you give us these tax breaks, we're going to go ahead and produce this oil in our current legacy fields. We're given 60% tax credits and deductions in legacy fields right now.
So that's going well, and they're expending billions of dollars, which is why we have fairly high employment up on the North Slope right now. The surrounding industries are falling off, but how are we going to get new oil fields in the pipeline, which they have promised that they would invest in if they had a different tax structure? I'm still not hearing a plan, I guess, is my point. We're declining 6 to 7% per year, every year, year after year, from previous years in oil production, and I'm not hearing a plan from you.
Okay, well, you haven't asked me for a plan, first off, and you keep cutting me off before I'm able to give you a plan.
Okay.
If you go online, actually, if you're interested in going online, wielokowski.org, you can Google my name and then go to my website, my campaign website. I have a plan that I put forward. It's 6 points. And it talks about things that we can do. Some of them are tweaks to the current ACES tax structure, which I think are appropriate. Number one, I do agree that we should be capping progressivity at a certain level. Whether it's 55% or 60%, I think at a certain level we become too high. So I would agree with that. Number two, this is something that I voted on in the Senate, and in fact the entire Senate voted for it. There's maybe a couple people that voted against it, but that was tax credits, tax breaks for new oil and new fields, so that you get a tax break if you produce in a new field. That's something that we voted on. Another thing that I support is enforcement of the leases. And I think this is probably one of the most important things that we can do, quite frankly, because I am a firm believer, and I come to this after sitting through dozens of hearings, that the oil companies are sitting on huge amounts of leases, quite frankly, that are extremely profitable right now under our current tax structure, and they are not developing them, and their leases require. Leases are a two-way street.
Wait a minute. Let's go back to that. I want to make sure that we're talking about, and you're a lawyer, which should be relevant to this point. Is there any place on Earth that has found people who are producing part of a lease and not producing another part of the lease are in violation of the lease agreement?
I don't have court cases right in front of me.
As far as I understand it, there is no case that you could point to because it's never happened ever. It is not true. They are not in violation of their leases. Their leases say that they have to, when you group these things, and the state of Alaska agreed to group them into production units, we say if you produce out of this production unit, you are fulfilling your leases. It's just not legally correct to say that they are not fulfilling their legal obligations. That's not true.
I think that's completely inaccurate. And I'll tell you why.
Okay, well then you will provide me with a case that shows that if the state of Alaska agrees to make a production unit out of it, and they produce off the production unit that they're not fulfilling, you go ahead and prove that to me, because this is very relevant.
Well, it may no, I agree.
And it prevents you from saying your point, which is saying that they are in violation of a law right now.
No, well,
that's why it's relevant.
First of all, I completely disagree with you. From a legal perspective, so we're the landlord, they're the tenant. They're a mutual consideration for taking out a lease. They take out a lease. We give up exclusive right to that piece of property, however big it is, right? They, on the other hand, have the obligation, the legal obligation to produce.
They are producing off the leases. Do you agree that they're producing or not?
Well,
okay, you don't agree,
some.
So that would be good to have a court case on, no?
Well, they're producing some.
Of course they're producing some. They can't produce all. We didn't make the argument that they had to produce all.
They have a legal obligation to produce on their fields.
They are producing on their fields right now.
Well, I'll tell you one that they're not. The one that Jim Alva, CEO of ConocoPhillips, came to Alaska and said, if you give us tax breaks, we're going to produce this new facility called IPAT, and we're going to drill X number of wells, and we're going to produce 90,000 new barrels a day.
So this is your plan. Your plan is if they don't produce the things that they said would be profitable at a different tax structure, that you'll force them legally to try and produce them because they've already come forward and said, we could potentially make profit here depending on how everything else goes. And so you'll force them legally to do it.
Well, all you need to do is look at Point Thompson. Point Thompson is a field that we let them sit on for 30 years.
Well, we didn't want production from gas for 30 years. We wanted possibly have, we've been using it for 30 years in other ways, so we never wanted.
We're not Point Thompson. We haven't used it all. Nothing's been done at Point Thompson.
No, gas has been used up on the North Slope for 30
years.
Not
the gas at Point Thompson.
No, not the gas at Point Thompson. But we accepted the changes to those plans for 30 years. It's not like they've been violating their leases for 30 years. Gas was not economical for them to produce.
I'm not talking about the gas in Point Thompson. I'm talking about the hundreds of millions of barrels of condensate and billions of barrels of oil in Point Thompson.
That is a tiny oil field in comparison to all of the other oil fields that were up there. They wouldn't have produced it. So anyway, you're legally forcing them to produce on Point Thompson, and that's your example of a success story. And look, it may be. I don't have a difficulty forcing them because we rejected their last plan, but they weren't producing it at all. That is a known court case. We did take that to court, and it's totally different than when we organize these things into a unit and telling them that they're breaking the law by not producing them. Do we agree or disagree on that?
We disagree, and here's why. Let's say you have a Prudhoe Bay. Let's say there's a Point Thompson, and Exxon goes in, and we know there's hundreds of millions, if not billions, of barrels of oil there. There's 8 trillion cubic feet, and they stick one little well in there, and they start sucking out a couple thousand barrels a day. And they say, we're meeting our obligation. That's all we're going to do. That's crazy.
Okay, but they haven't done that. So where's your boogeyman? I don't understand. You're saying that this goes on right now in the state of Alaska, so
Absolutely.
You're giving us a perfect example of something that's going on right now?
Absolutely.
Because what I see is they're punching as many holes in the ground as they possibly can.
Okay. Well, I disagree. I mean, that's
wow.
just flat out not true.
You should run all the oil companies. I bet you'd be good at that.
Look.
Is that what you want to do, by the way?
We're the manager of the resource.
Okay, so you do want to run all the oil companies. Why do you think that they're not investing in Alaska?
Okay. Why do I think they're not investing?
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you go into the car. It's sort of like you go into a car shop, and the dealer says, "Hey, don't buy this car. Wait until next week or next month or next year. We're going to have 30% off."
So they're waiting for the state of Alaska to fail.
They're waiting for their massive tax. I've had oil company lobbyists tell me that.
Yeah.
I've had oil company lobbyists
tell me. Well, no, they are waiting for a tax cut because they can invest down in Canada and in Texas and other places and get a better return on their investment. You don't like the free market, I take it.
Well, wait a second.
Yeah.
No, I love the free market, Glenn.
What about it do you like?
I love the free market.
That people can make a decision on where they invest their money, and
love it. Here's
what
the
do you
deal.
love about it?
You can invest your money.
Well, wait, you're trying to invest their money against a penalty of law.
I'm not trying to invest their money. All I'm saying is if you take out a lease in the state of Alaska and you decide to sit on it and ignore it.
We've already covered that. You don't have an example of it, so I wish you would stop using the example.
Incorrect. I gave you an example. You just don't agree with my example.
No, I agree with Point Thompson. They weren't producing it at all, nowhere, and we rejected their final plan, and then they were forced to produce, but they're producing all the other ones.
Well, you tell me an example because I've asked the oil and gas director, tell me a field on the North Slope. Tell me a project, tell me a development on the North Slope that is uneconomic under ACES. You know what his answer was? There are none. Tell me a field or project that is uneconomic under ACES that will become economic under House Bill 110 or some similar version. He said, I am unaware of any.
So this is an assault on profits. They can make more profits.
Ridiculous.
Look,
Glenn,
this is why
ridiculous.
They're uneconomic, because they can make a 20% return in Canada, and they can only make a 4% return maybe here. So why would they invest here versus there? That's your problem. You don't like the free market.
That's crazy, Glenn. That's absolutely absurd.
Well, that's what I hear.
No, that's not what you're hearing. You're hearing what you're just making things up. The reality is, according to Parnell's consultants, they're making rates of return of over 100% at Prudhoe Bay right now. They're doing great at Prudhoe Bay.
That's
Since
right.
we passed ACES,
so what's the tie between Prudhoe Bay and other places I'm missing? Because it took them 10 years to get across CD5 because the Army Corps of Engineers wouldn't give a permit. How do you put that into a spreadsheet?
I sent a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers urging that they allow that.
Well,
I'm glad
but
that
I'm
they
just
did.
saying, I'm talking about the risk and reward investing here in the state of Alaska. It doesn't make sense. They need more incentives to be able to invest here, and I'm trying to find out from you. You sound like you want to force them to invest here because there's some legal
All
obligation,
I'm
which I've
saying is,
asked you to prove,
if you
which I
take
don't
out a
think
lease,
exists.
if you take out a lease in the state of Alaska, you cannot sit on that lease.
They're
You
not
have a
sitting
legal
on the
obligation.
leases.
Of course they are.
I thought
Of
we
course they are.
established that any place
We
other
did not
than Point
establish that.
Thompson.
No, they're
Okay,
sitting
so
on
this
leases
is a
on the North
fundamental
Slope.
disagreement. Now,
This
the
is
other
a fundamental
disagreement is you think that a 4% return on investment when they could get 15 or 20% somewhere else is the right thing for them to do for us to force them to invest here and not change our tax structure.
I think that if you can make the rate of return that the Parnell
Anything other than zero, that's what you're saying.
No.
That's what the law says.
Are you gonna let me answer?
Yeah.
Glenn? Okay. Can you just pause for a second and let me answer your question? Because if not, we're not going to continue this conversation. Are you going to let me answer the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. When a company invests in the state of Alaska, they have a legal obligation to produce. Now, we've asked our experts what that means. And what our experts say is you look at the company's hurdle rates. And hurdle rates for oil production are typically anywhere from 15 to 35%, meaning that oil companies expect to make at least 15, up some 35% on their investment. Well, if you look at what they're making on the North Slope at Prudhoe Bay, according to Parnell's consultants at Prudhoe Bay, 123% at $80
What is the
oil.
relevance to a new find? That's what I'm trying to get to.
This is not a new find. This is infill drilling. This is what we're talking about, is infill drilling.
They're doing infill drilling. They're drilling hundreds and hundreds of holes.
Well, they're not drilling hundreds and hundreds of holes. No,
I'm sorry. That's what I heard. You want me to justify that they're drilling hundreds of holes inside of existing fields?
No. Well, they probably drilled about 115.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's 115. But they're not producing the existing field. So we already get that. Prudhoe Bay was a wonderful find. We're trying to get them to invest in new ones, and I'm trying to understand your plan in trying to get them to invest there.
And what I've told you is, okay, so now we're off infield drilling. Do we agree that we don't need to do anything for infield drilling?
No, I don't know. I don't know whether there is anything more that needs to be done. I'm not an expert on oil and gas. You sound like one.
Well, this is where, what we've suggested is you look at the company's decline curves. The companies have set decline curves for all their fields. They've come into the Department of Revenue and they've said, hey, this is what we expect the decline curve to be. In the legislature and the Senate, we said, okay, this is what our consultant recommended, Biegel. He said, yeah, do decline curves. If they beat the decline curve, they get tax breaks. And so we proposed legislation like that. We were on the verge of passing it. The oil industry came in, their lobbyists came in and said, we don't like it. We want to hire, instead of a 2 or 3% decline curve, we want a 6% decline curve. And we said, well, why should we give you a 6% decline curve when you've already told us you're going to have a 2 or 3% decline curve? The difference is billions of dollars. So decline curve is another way that you can deal with infield drilling. Now, as far as new fields go, the big three have testified before the legislature. They don't plan on doing any new exploration if you pass HB 110. They're on the record as saying that. So if you want new exploration, there are other ways that you can do it, and that's why what we did in the Senate was we passed a bill that said for new fields, new exploration. Well, first of all, exploration is getting 80 to 100% tax credits. They're getting massive credits. But for new fields, what they are getting, what we proposed in the Senate, I voted on it, was a massive tax break. This is 30%.
And it's still not enough. Boy, they must hate profits.
No. Actually, the new companies, the Repsols, the Pioneers, the Armstrongs,
have they produced a single barrel of oil in the state?
Well, hold on. I'm talking about the bill that we proposed.
You're talking about finding it versus producing it. Hey, Bill Wielokowski he's running for Senate against Bob Roses out on the east side, and I'm going to have to go to break, and I apologize for that. We actually went through 2 segments there. It was a shootout, and I appreciate it. I'm still not sure I understand your plan other than forcing people to legally, what you consider to be legally, do things that wouldn't be in their interest. I do appreciate it. I have to go to break, though. Thanks, Bill Wielokowski, Senator Wielokowski, running against Bob Roses on the east side. Stay tuned, folks.
Now, live from the Augie Hebert Broadcast Studios, it's Glen Biegel on AM 700 KBYR. Alaska Talks Here.
I desperately want to have productive conversation, and in doing that, I have to make shortcuts, which mean trying to shorten the presentation that my ideological opponents have. I apologize to Senator Wielokowski for trying to shorten the argument. But look, I think you heard as much as I could possibly get you to hear on what his plan is for oil development. Folks, it's been a great blessing for me today to be with you. God bless you, and if he blesses you, I hope you bless somebody else. Thanks, Mr. Producer. Great show. I'll be back again tomorrow. Shootout Thursday on the Glen Biegel program. Stay tuned for that. 22 hours from now. Rusty Humphreys is coming up, so stay tuned.